And so, ladies and gentlemen, to start things off on this episode, I might as well go ahead and do the biggest story that happened this week. And this is actually a pretty big one. It's already been massively discussed about ever since they first revealed it. I am talking, of course, ladies and gentlemen, the nominations for the 90th Academy Awards. Yes, they have officially been revealed, and my god, so many emotions have been poured out when the list has pretty much been revealed and when everything has been announced. And as you may know, just to give you guys a quick summary about what's been happening in general with the Oscars, of course you may have heard that The Shape of Water is the big movie this year that actually got the most nominations, with a total of 13 of them. And of course, it's going to be up against a lot of big name competitors in there. We're talking about movies like The Darkest Hour, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, I, Tonya, what the fridge else are they going to be battling against? Movies like Phantom Thread, Dunkirk, and so much more. Like, these movies will be going head to head to see which ones will be gathering the most Oscars and who is going to be getting the big one, Best Picture. However, considering that this is the animation podcast, we're going to be looking into the ones that are specifically catered to animation. Specifically, I'm going to start things off with Best Animated Short and give out my thoughts on that. And then afterwards, we will be discussing about Best Animated Feature. And oh boy, this has been quite a controversial list, I tell ya. Like, this can be something that could even overshadow the whole Lego Movie controversy. But first things first, allow me to go ahead and discuss a little bit about Best Animated Short. So, without further ado, and so, ladies and gentlemen, the nominees for Best Animated Short Film are Dear Basketball, Garden Party, Lou, Negative Space, and Revolting Rhymes Part 1. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and start things off that, as I am recording this podcast right now, I have yet to actually see most of these shorts. I haven't seen Garden Party, I haven't seen Negative Space, and I haven't seen Revolting Rhymes yet. But I will. I promise you guys, I'll do my best to go and see all these animated shorts before the actual Oscars would come in. So I do have plenty of time, and I'll do my best to try to find them, and I'll even be willing to pay to actually go ahead and see those shorts. But one thing I can definitely say for sure, I am so glad that Lou and Dear Basketball actually did get a nomination, because both these shorts are actually really phenomenal. You got Lou, of course, which is the big Pixar animated short that appeared before Cars 3. And honestly, during that whole theater experience, Lou was actually the best thing out of all of it. Because it's so creative with the way that they would take all these different objects and they would create this one character out of it. Like, it really is a lot of fun, and even if you guys don't really care much about Cars 3, at least looking at Lou really does make it worth it. And I would definitely categorize Lou as one of the most creative Pixar shorts that they have ever done. So I'm glad I see that getting a nomination. And then, of course, you got Dear Basketball, which I've already talked about this a few times in the animation podcast before. And just in case you don't know it, this is actually an animated short created by 3 masters of their own field. Of course, since it is Dear Basketball, this is actually based on a poem written by Kobe Bryant, and he is kind of like the head honcho of the project, kind of like the executive producer. And the director and the man who is supplying the animation is one of the masters of the medium, Glenn Keane. And finally, the music, the powerful booming music that they supplied in this is actually done by John Williams. Yes, that John Williams. So combine all these 3 masters together and you pretty much get Dear Basketball, which really is a heartwarming tribute to something that Kobe Bryant absolutely loves, which is basketball. And it truly is an inspiring piece that really does tell you to follow your dreams, and that like, despite all the odds, like, no matter how much you do, like, if you manage to work hard, you can be able to make your dreams come true. And honestly, I find it to really be beautiful. I'm sure you could go and find it online. I've seen it circulating on Facebook a few times, so I'm sure if you can look it up, you could definitely go ahead and find Dear Basketball for free. But yeah, overall, I could say right now that and honestly, this is just my thoughts before actually seeing the others like Garden Party, Negative Space, and Revolting Rhymes. If either Lou or Dear Basketball ends up winning Best Animated Short, I would be really satisfied. I would be happy just right over there. And so, with all that said, now that we got the Best Animated Short list done, let us go ahead and go into the big one. The moment that we have all been waiting for. The nominees for Best Animated Feature Film. And my god, let's just say, do you guys remember when I made my predictions? Well, in the animation podcast, where I tried to guess what could be on the list, like what's going to be the 5 animated films that will be nominated. Yeah, I was kind of way off, to be honest. Okay, so with all that said, ladies and gentlemen, the nominees for Best Animated Feature Film are The Boss Baby, DreamWorks Animation, The Breadwinner, Cartoon Saloon, Coco, Pixar Animation Studios, Ferdinand, Blue Sky Studios, and finally, Loving Vincent, Breakthrough Films. And honestly, I am not happy with this list at all. And I might as well start things off by explaining the biggest reason why I'm not happy with this list. Now, I actually do mean this literally, like not figuratively, not kind of like, no, like flat out literally. This is just a copy of the Best Animated Features list at the Golden Globes. Like, literally, all of it is pretty much the same thing. Down to the point that they have the same independent animated features, which is also a very rare thing that the Golden Globes would do in the first place. And they also got the same random batch of mainstream animated films with The Boss Baby and Ferdinand. This is all literally the same thing. I don't think this has ever happened before in the history of the Oscars and the Golden Globes that they share the same Best Animated Feature Film category. It's almost like the Oscars felt a little bit lost. Like, they were confused. They don't know what to do with the Best Animated Feature category, so they had to go next door at the Golden Globes, and they were like, hey, Globes, hope I'm not giving you any trouble, or hope I'm not bothering you or anything. Do you mind helping me out with something? Yeah, sure. Well, what is it? Well, honestly, it's just this list here. You know, I'm trying to figure out what to nominate for Best Animated Feature Film. I mean, I got The Breadwinner, and I got Coco, of course. I just don't know what to do with the 3 others. Oh, really? Well, I mean, actually, can I ask you something? Do you know what's going to be the winner? Yeah, I think I'm just going to go with Coco. So, with that said, is it really going to matter if you really have to carefully pick which one you got to go with the nominations? Well, honestly, I guess I don't think so. Here, you know what? Actually, here, take my list. You know, you could just copy it, no matter what. It doesn't matter. Just, here, you could take it. Are you sure? Yeah. It's perfectly fine. Are you sure? Like, it's not gonna upset anyone? Like, listen, if Coco is going to be the winner, is it going to be is it going to matter who's going to get nominated? Well, I guess not. There, exactly. All right. Well, I guess it'll get me out of a pickle. So, yeah, thank you very much, Globes. Yeah, no problem, Oscar. And that's basically what happened right over here. It's just somehow the Oscars decided, screw it, let's just go ahead and copy this. And let me just start things off, actually, with the one movie that for some reason, not just the Oscars, but plenty of other award shows decided to just go ahead and skip over, which is the Lego Batman movie. And a lot of people are pretty much saying that out of all the things that got snubbed at the Oscars, a lot of people would say that Some of the biggest Oscar snubs this year would include Steven Spielberg not getting a Best Director nomination for The Post, James Franco not getting a Best Actor nomination for The Disaster Artist, or Wonder Woman not getting any sort of nomination at all. But then there was also the Lego Batman movie not nominated for Best Animated Feature. And that's where you find a little bit of that Lego movie controversy re-emerging again. But honestly, I do find this to be a little bit worse than the Lego movie controversy, because here's the thing. As much as the Lego movie itself got so much praise and stuff like that, when you look at the list of the animated films that got nominated at the Oscars, at least those ones, like the animated films of 2014, they really do deserve it in their own merit. Like when you think about films like The Box Trolls, Big Hero 6, How to Train Your Dragon 2, and the independent films like Song of the Sea and The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, these are all incredible animated features that in their own right, they deserve to at least get an Oscar nomination. So that's why you can give a little bit of a pass for not actually giving the Lego movie a nomination. Like, sure, maybe the Lego movie would deserve to get an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature, but so do those films as well. Like, they definitely earn their spot in there. In here, however, now I've said this before about the animated films of 2017, it's just that it really is a really bad year. And I'm not just saying that because we had the Emoji movie, but it's mostly because the grand majority of animated films, they range from decent to mediocre to just plain suck. Like, we got a whole batch of absolutely forgettable animated films. And the only ones that are actually worth remembering, the ones that got critical praise from critics and audiences, are just Coco and the Lego Batman movie. Maybe you can add in Captain Underpants as well, but that's pretty much it, at least in terms of the mainstream animated films. So it is really disappointing that one of the movies that did actually get critical praise in terms of an animated feature, that it would just flat out be ignored at the Oscars. And I find that to be a little bit ridiculous. And I know that there are some people that would argue that, well, technically it could be because it's technically it's a spin-off film and they don't really care much about those, or that it's a superhero film and they don't really want to pay much attention to that, which is also why Wonder Woman didn't get a nomination. That are also, technically, since it is a Lego movie, it is actually just one big commercial in order to sell toys and stuff like that. Okay, maybe I get those arguments, but again, like, we're talking about one of the very few animated films of 2017 that got critical praise. How does that not earn itself an Oscar nomination? And instead, we end up with a list where The Boss Baby is now an Oscar-nominated animated feature. Yep, I don't know what the fridge happened, but we ended up in a spot where one of the worst DreamWorks films is now Oscar nominated for some reason. No, not Captain Underpants, The Boss Baby. The movie where Alec Baldwin is acting like Alec Baldwin in a baby's body, making lowbrow baby jokes. That apparently is enough to get the Oscars' attention. Like, why? Like, honestly though, the saddest thing about that movie getting a nomination is that we probably should have seen this coming. We really should. And the reason why I say that is because you look at many of the other award shows that they would put their list of Best Animated Feature, and some of them would actually have The Boss Baby. Like, it is actually pretty prominent, not just with the Golden Globes, but even with the Annie Awards. Other than Coco and The Breadwinner, The Boss Baby is actually quite a competitor who did gather a good amount of awards for itself. And yeah, and one of them is actually for Best Animated Feature. So technically, we shouldn't be surprised that The Boss Baby would find itself at the Oscars as well. But then again, there are so many other movies that are much more worthy to get an Oscar nomination than the frickin' Boss Baby. I mean, literally, you can't think of anything else. Like, not even Captain Underpants is worthy enough to get an Oscar nomination. I mean, sure, that movie didn't make half the amount of money that the Boss Baby did at the box office, but at least the amount of effort that it was put into that film is a lot stronger. And I mean, it's not just Captain Underpants. I mean, you couldn't just put in, like, Despicable Me 3? You couldn't just put in even Cars 3? Or actually, if we can all agree onto one type of movie that is better to give an Oscar nomination than The Boss Baby, it should have been a third independent film. Like, why not just give it to something like Mary and the Witch's Flower, or Big Bad Fox and Other Tales? And actually, the saddest truth is that if Best Animated Feature would actually be based on the quality of the movie, then the list would be just Coco and 4 other independent films that the general public has never heard of. That is kind of the sad reality about this. But yeah, like, out of all the movies, I really want to know, why the fridge is the Boss Baby here? Why pick the Boss Baby to be an Oscar-nominated animated film? I mean, seriously. But if it's not the Boss Baby that you would be upset about that got an Oscar nomination, you got freaking Ferdinand right over here. I mean, seriously, I know, like, technically Ferdinand is not necessarily the worst animated film that came out in 2017. That spot is already given to the Emoji Movie. But really, I mean, you had one job, Oscars. You had one job. The one time that you would have to give Blue Sky Studios the attention to go and actually give one of their films a nomination for Best Animated Feature. The one time you can actually do that, it's not with the Peanuts movie, it's with frickin' Ferdinand? Really? Like, what is it that made Ferdinand stand out, not only among all the other animated films, like, again, like, why pick I'll ask again, with, the same question that I asked for the Boss Baby. Why not go with something like Captain Underpants, or Cars 3, or Despicable Me 3? Or why not another independent animated feature? Why do you have to go with frickin' Ferdinand? I mean, seriously. It's not even one of Blue Sky's best films, and yet, like, somehow it found itself here. Honestly, I'm just baffled. I'm not saying it's the worst. It's just like one of those things that it just feels out of place for some reason. Like, you look at it and you ask, well, why are you here? It's just, it really does, for me, it just doesn't make sense seeing something like Ferdinand or the freaking Boss Baby get a nomination. But if I may go ahead and shed some light onto the Best Animated Feature category, of course, there are some of those, there are some that, in my opinion, they do not deserve to have the Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature Film. There are others, however, that definitely do deserve to have that recognition. First of all, of course, you got Coco, which also, may I add, actually has 2 nominations at the Oscars, not just for Best Animated Feature Film, but is also nominated for Best Original Song for Remember Me, which I will be rooting for. And on a side note, actually, surprisingly enough, unlike at the Golden Globes, the Oscars only put in 1 animated feature to be nominated for Best Original Song. Like, if you remember at the Golden Globes, they actually put in The Star and they put in Ferdinand also to be nominated in there. But the rest are actually just some of the live-action films. Of course, you see Mudbound with Mighty River and The Greatest Showman with This Is Me. And then there's also, you got Marshall for Stand Up for Something and Call Me By Your Name for The Mystery of Love. So, honestly, at least for me, I will be rooting for Coco to win. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes at the Oscars. Maybe it won't, but still, I mean, I will give it the support. But yeah, I mean, Coco, of course, it is one of, if not the best animated film of the year in terms of the mainstream animated features. So yeah, it definitely does deserve its spot right over there. And then, of course, you also got The Breadwinner, such a powerful movie. And yeah, considering that, like, other than Coco, it really is an animated film that's been hopping from award show to award show. You see that name appear all the time, so definitely great that it's on the list. And then you also got Loving Vincent, which is actually a very interesting movie, considering that if you look at the reactions from critics, they do say that as a movie it is a little bit weak, but the biggest reason why it's in there is mainly because of the animation. Like, this is the type of film that no way possible that it's going to win, but at least what it did in a technical level, it is enough to at least get an attention to get nominated at the Oscars. With Loving Vincent, this is literally the first oil-painted animated feature where every frame is literally a work of art. Every frame is actually a painting. And, you know, I do understand that with that technical achievement, it would be enough to at least just get an Oscar nomination. So I would say that overall with this list, yeah, it is kind of crappy. Especially, it's just for me, I am more upset of the fact that it really is unoriginal, considering that this is just a flat out copy to what they did at the Golden Globes. I'm more upset about that more so than just which individual movies are actually nominated. Like, yeah, for me, my personal opinion, I don't feel like The Boss Baby or Ferdinand should get an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature Film. There are better films than that do deserve it. But on the other hand, I guess technically it doesn't necessarily matter, considering that a lot of people do know that Coco is going to win, and like, if there is any major plot twist, if it's not going to be Coco, then of course it's going to be The Breadwinner. But overall, yeah, it is kind of a weak list. But there are some things I am happy about. I am happy, of course, that Coco and The Breadwinner, they got a nomination, very well deserved. And also with Best Animated Short, with Lou and Dear Basketball, those ones are definitely well deserved as well. But yeah, it is a pretty disappointing list this year, and it has been causing a major uproar. Like, I think out of all the things that people got upset about in terms of what got nominated and what didn't get nominated, one of the big things, at the very least, is actually the fact that The Boss Baby got a godforsaken nomination. But yeah, regardless of what I said, though, I'm just going to say congratulations to all the people that got nominated at this year's Oscars for their great achievement with what they did with their own respective movies. And who's going to be the big winner? Well, some answers are pretty obvious. Some of them are still remain a mystery. We'll just have to go ahead and wait and see until March 4th, when we are going to discover who will win the Oscar.